The U.S. is facing two related crises, dangerous spikes in both COVID and cases of unemployment. Mass vaccination clinics are now open in places like New York, Houston, and Los Angeles. More than 10 million doses have so far been administered nationwide. But experts say we need to move a lot faster. Tonight on primetime television, President-elect Joe Biden will unveil his plan to get states more help faster. And as my NBC News colleagues report, he'll also address the economic crisis and his first plans to get $1 trillion in direct relief to those who need it right now. It could not come any sooner. The Labor Department says laid-off workers need first-time benefits now more than any time since this summer. Joining me is the director of Columbia University's National Center for Disaster Preparedness, Dr. Irwin Redlener, and the former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors during the Obama administration, Austan Goolsbee. He's currently a professor at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. So we're going to try and tackle these two crises together with the two of you. So Joe Biden's going to unveil, Dr. Redlener, his plan to get states help faster. What do you want to see in it?
Well, first of all, I think they need to be careful about overpromising. He's talking about 100 million doses of the vaccine actually administered to people by the end of his first 100 days. And it's a very important aspirational goal. And they have a spectacular team assembled, Katy, to make sure that we get as close to that goal as possible. But I think it's appropriate just to say that this is not a magic bullet. It's not going to instantly solve the problem of controlling the pandemic, and we're still going to need, of course, to be using the guidelines from public health about separation of individuals wearing masks and hand hygiene. This is going to go on for some number of months, but I'm very confident that the new team is ready and able to try to do as much as possible, as quickly as possible. There's some other challenges to meet there, but like you said, this is going to be a complicated time because we not only have the economic challenge you just mentioned and the pandemic, we also have a level of political unrest that, the riots on January 6th were concurrent with the highest total death rates in a given day. So the political events overshadowed this extraordinary exacerbation of the pandemic. So this is not an option of a menu of options. This is going to be something, all these things are going to have to be tackled simultaneously, Katy.
So on the subject of mass vaccinations, part of this is going to be a federal mass vaccination site or sites. We're seeing some of those sites already open in a number of places around the country. Dr. Thomas Frieden, the former CDC director, warned that there could be an issue with that. Let's listen to him.
The states have had vaccine essentially dumped on them by the federal government. They haven't had advance warning of how much is coming. They didn't have funds to develop plans.
I'm glad that soundbite finally played. Dr. Redlener, how do you resolve that issue?
Well, among the more incompetent things that's happened around the vaccines is this, as Dr. Frieden was saying, a very disturbing lack of planning on the part of the federal government. They have left this up to the states, and the states do not have the resources they need or the directions they need for how to distribute this. There's even been controversy about who actually are the priority groups, even though that was put out by the CDC, but how to implement those was left a mystery to be solved on an ad hoc basis by the states. We got lots and lots of issues, and I think a lot of those kinds of things in terms of communications and managing the federal role here is going to get better in a week from now when the Biden team's in place. But it's quite a mess that's going to be left by Donald Trump and his administration in terms of making sure these vaccines are getting manufactured, distributed, and administered as quickly as possible. We're way behind where we should be right now.
So, Austan, the other crisis, the economic crisis, over $1 trillion is what the Biden team wants to get out in aid to those who need it now. How should that work?
Well, they should get it as quickly as possible. I mean, look, virus. That's what's driving the economy into the toilet. And we saw a terrible downturn in the spring, a rapid rebound of maybe halfway what we lost. And the Trump administration has been trumpeting, look, it's going away. We put this thing to bed. And what we've now seen in the last couple of months is this is a swamp thing. I mean, you thought it was dead and the hand is coming out of the swamp, coming to get you again. And the jobs numbers were big negative. We got just this morning that new unemployment claims jumped quite precipitously and more than we expected. And we're in high danger of going into a double dip recession. So we've got to get control of that virus, and we've got to get relief money out the door rapidly. And people should not kid themselves. Look, this is going to be more than $1 trillion. But if we cannot get control of that virus, we will be back in not very many months and need another $1 trillion of relief, because you've got to stop the virus if you want to help the economy.
He's going to have to go to Congress for this. And yes, he does have a majority, but it is a slim majority. And it's unclear if he's going to be able to get everything he wants. What tools does the president, and will be President Joe Biden in a few days, what tools does he have to get that money out without Congress's help?
Well, he's got some executive orders that he can do, and Donald Trump certainly laid the groundwork for very expansive executive orders that nobody thought the president could do some of the things that the president did. Number two, having worked with the vice president closely in the first term of the Obama administration, he's a very persuasive guy, and he has a lot of relationships and friends. And I would say third, the virus, the pain of the virus is not concentrated just in blue states or just in cities or just anywhere. It's all over the country. And you saw with the relief packages up to now, yes, there are arguments, but ultimately, if everybody is suffering, there will be a lot of Republicans as well as Democrats who say, okay, yes, let us fight one another, but let's not fight about this. Let's try to get some relief to everybody. So I think that I'm grimly optimistic.
Hopefully. And I'm optimistic that those sirens aren't for either one of you that I'm hearing in the background. Austan Goolsbee, Dr. Irwin Redlener, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.